really seeing our children. What if I gave you a permission slip that said, your job is to feel good? And what if I told you that the better you feel, the bigger impact you can make in the world? And in fact, that is the magical parenting strategy that we've all been searching for. Hey, I'm Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, breadwinner, recovering hustler, and stage 4 cancer survivor. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this show is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life both at home and at work. My attempt is to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh, you will cry, and you may even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your children, your health, or your relationships. And when you learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. It's time to ditch self-sacrifice and step into your brave zone. All right, everyone, I am back, and today I'm talking about children. Yes, more children. On Tuesday, I talked about understanding our problem child and read from the book, Dying to Be a Good Mother, which is now available on pre-order. And today, which is chapter 10, and today I wanted to read a little bit from chapter 4, which is about really seeing our children. And I always say that children's behavior is a language, right? Children's behavior is a language, and we need to truly understand what is it that our children are saying to us and speaking to us. And when we begin to understand this and we're not so triggered or reactionary, we see everybody like that. We see our partners like that. We see our friends like that, our parents. Every human being that we come into contact with, we meet with more compassion because we know even if they're having a tantrum or they're angry or they're rebellious or defensive or whatever it is, that their behavior is speaking to us. So I wanted to read a little bit from chapter 4 today. This is on page 47 of my new book, Dying to Be a Good Mother, that you can actually purchase at dyingtobeagoodmother.com. There's 2 buttons there. One is to download the workbook, and the other button will take you to the page where you can see the pre-order bonuses and pre-order links. You can order it pretty much anywhere online, but we have those direct links there for you at dyingtobeagoodmother.com. And when you purchase before March 8th, so you have until midnight on March 7th to pre-order your book, we are offering a free VIP ticket to Aligned and Alive, which is an online event that I will be hosting where we're going to be digging deeper more into the book and the process, and that is on March 26th. So the date is coming up very quickly. You can host your own book club. You can mail them to a friend. You do have to purchase 4 books to qualify for Aligned and Alive. So you can do that at dyingtobeagoodmother.com. All right. So let's dig in. Chapter 4, really seeing our children. Almost as soon as Sammy walked in the room, I sensed that he was trying to tell me something. It was our first meeting, and he was clearly searching for someone he could trust. Someone who would listen to what he had to say without telling him who he should be. Like many of the kids in the system, Sammy had been classified as having behavioral issues, but from the moment I met him, I saw something different. He had this incredible light that brightened the room. He was also funny, entertaining, and disruptive. He wasn't big on following the rules, so if I told him he could have 2 pieces of candy, he'd try to get 3. That didn't bother me. In fact, I respected his scrappy attitude. It showed his resilience. But it also showed me that if I didn't listen, Sammy would make sure I heard him by using behaviors to get my attention. That light I saw in Sammy was often masked. His life had been far too hard for far too long, and he'd been through things no child can easily understand or process. Abuse, neglect, abandonment, and he wasn't quick to trust the adults in his life as a result. I didn't blame him or hold him against it. Trust is vulnerable, a privilege that must be earned. Being disruptive was how he got attention. It was also how he figured out which, if any, adults would truly and deeply listen to what he was trying to say to the world. Knowing that Sammy was testing me, I made a point not approaching him the way that most adults he'd known had, armed with rules and expectations that he had to meet. Instead, I focused on creating connection. I knew I had to communicate with him on his terms and let him know that I accepted him the way that he was. It took time, but little by little, as I gained his trust, I began to set boundaries, always making sure to reward him for his respect. The more he trusted, the more boundaries I could create. There were very real limits to how hard and fast I could push him, though. A single misstep on my part, one failure to make him feel seen and heard, and all of the work that I've done to earn his trust might suddenly be undone. That was true with all kids I worked with in my job. I had to prioritize my respect for them above and beyond the rules, above and beyond what I was supposed to do. How I interacted with each of them varied depending on their personality and willingness to engage on any given day. When kids were defensive, I immediately backed off. That was my way of saying, I see you and you need space. I'm here, but I also respect the boundary you're laying down. The kids who react to the trauma they've survived by going inwards sometimes wanted to paint or write. When they let me, I joined them. Other times I'd simply sit with kids in silence, making sure not to project any judgment on them or their desire not to connect in any outward way. The more time I spent with these kids, the more I appreciated and respected them. They've been through so much and had so few of their basic needs: stability, safety, nurturing, love, food, and reliable shelter met. At one point, a senior staffer at the office remarked that I had a special something around connecting with the children in the system. It wasn't a coincidence. I experienced feeling unseen and misunderstood throughout my own childhood. When, at a very young age, the world tells you that you don't matter, your shame grows so acute and so sharp that all you want to do is vanish. Very quickly, you learn to keep your pain to yourself. You figure out that daring to speak your true feelings is often misinterpreted as the reason for people to try to fix you. It's exhausting. So you stop speaking and instead use behavior as a means of communicating your complicated emotions to a world that's not interested, a world that's quick to judge and slow to care enough to actually listen. It's a searing pain to grow up with, not wanting other children to have to suffer in those ways. I became the adult I needed as a child. Like many of the children I was now overseeing in my job, I too had struggled in school. Rebellious by nature, I constantly asked why we were learning this or that and why I had to hand in assignments that seemed pointless to me. My curiosity had often been interpreted as disrespect and viewed as a sign that I'd never succeed in life. From a young age, like the children I was now observing had had heard that I wasn't smart enough or worthy enough to succeed in school or in life. These children didn't just speak to me on some deeper level. They were me. I could relate to them because in ways that weren't obvious but still very personal, I'd been like them. All right. So, chapter 4, really seeing our children. I think this is so important for us as adults. It doesn't matter, children, no children. We have children in our lives, regardless. But I want you to think back to a moment as a child. Did you feel seen and heard? And if you did, who allowed you to feel that way? And why did they make you feel that way? In a healthy way. A healthy way when you felt seen and heard. And if you didn't feel seen and if you didn't feel heard by an adult, what was it? How did that adult show up in your life that made you feel invisible? Because oftentimes when I'm talking to parents and women, allowing somebody to understand that, listen, the better you feel in your life, the more present you are, the more connected you feel to the people in your life that matter most to you. And I'm not perfect at this by any means. I mean, I teach this stuff for a living. I wrote a freaking book on it, and this is a daily practice. But what I've noticed in myself is that this isn't difficult. It truly is not difficult to connect to a child or another human being. It's vulnerable, and it's incredibly emotionally uncomfortable. And so the more emotional intelligence work that we do, the more internal we go, the more we understand what does it actually feel like to see somebody, to authentically show up for someone. What does that mean? Because the second you show up for somebody, they don't always return the favor. Because sometimes we've experienced a lot of trauma. Sometimes they've experienced a lot of neglect. Trust takes time. So my challenge for you today is with your own children, if you have children, to observe yourself as a connector. How are you seeing your children? Like truly seeing them? Like, do you know that they're like what their authentic interests are? Can you look at your children and say, oh, this one is so into, he's so creative, or she's so creative, and this one, she's a bookworm, or, very academic, or, this one is, loves math, and this one loves this, and this one loves that. And do you foster those strengths in your children? The things that allow them to feel alive? And when I say fostering, this is not another to-do list. This is not another thing on your to-do list. This is a way of being. Encouraging our children to create space for themselves, to do the things that they really want to do. And sometimes, if you're an adult like me, when you actually consciously create the space to do the things that you know you love doing, what do? You resist it. And when you are resisting doing things that bring you joy, what happens? You have an adult tantrum, right? I don't have time for this. Oh, must be nice. I can't do this. I have responsibilities. Your brain goes to your cell phone or goes to something else, and you find yourself scrolling, saying stuck. And then we watch the same behaviors show up in our children. Doesn't matter if it's toddler, a 10-year-old, a teenager. We all experience resistance. And my goal for you is to always ask you, what allows you to feel alive? When do you feel like yourself? When do you fully feel seen and heard? Are your basic human needs met? Honestly, are your basic human needs met? Because I truly feel like when we see ourselves on a deeper level, like truly see ourselves on a deeper level, we can then see and understand our children on the exact same level. All right, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Head on over to dyingtobeagoodmother.com and please purchase your or pre-order your book now. And when you buy 4 or more books that you can send to anyone as gifts, you get and then you send your receipts to book@heatherchauvin.com. You are gifted a complimentary VIP ticket to Aligned and Alive. So this is going to be our book launch party. I'm going to dive deeper into the book. I'm going to do some live reading of the book. It's going to be amazing. And you can also give that same link to everybody that you sent a book to. So just remember that the more we give, the bigger impact we're going to make in the world. So that's dyingtobeagoodmother.com. All of the pre-order details are there. You can find that on the page. And that is it. You are so worthy of feeling good.